Hours. How you doing today, Prince? How's everything going?
Yeah, everything is going well. I'm taking it day by day, and it's nice to be back here. I think the last time we spoke was about 2 years to I think a year to 2 years ago. That's been very good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a year to 2 years ago, different time, different era in the world of the graph, different time for subgraphs and now AMP. We're going to get into that, and I do want the audience to understand who you are, your background, and what brings you into this call today. But before I do that, I want to back up and just share a few announcements, and then we'll get into the chat today. So, first things first, the Graph Builders DAO is alive and well. And also, Prince, you're a member of the Graph Builders DAO. And what the Graph Builders DAO is if any team out there needs custom subgraphs or substreams built to spec, this is a team ready and waiting to build for you. So go ahead and reach out to Builders DAO, and you can go ahead and find their website at buildersdao.tech. And from there, Prince Justice, as well as a few other team members that I know very well, will be there to build your subgraphs and substreams for you. So we talked a little bit right now about that announcement, which is subgraphs, substreams. And
Yeah,
let's bring it back to the conversation with you. You've been in the graph ecosystem for a long time, isn't that right, Prince? How long have you been
yeah,
in the graph ecosystem, building with subgraphs and building with substreams?
close to 3 years, about 3 years.
3 years. What was your first impression of the graph, subgraphs, and substreams? Do you have an impression of all three, or do you have
So
an
I
impression of one that you want to speak about?
yeah, so in general, like the overarching vision of the graph, I see it to be like um similar to seeing Google, right? But for Web3, right? So if you
Mm.
look at things like hypergraphs, subgraphs, substreams, it's more about trying to make use of data, right? Trustless data, and we make it verifiable in addition, right? So when you come to the subgraph versus substream world, I would I would look at substream more as I'll look at Substream more as a Ferrari, right? Maybe you
Mm.
want like very powerful engines that can really like get deep into like very clunky data and get it out for you. That's how I see substreams, and I see subgraph as uh, a tool that has a less like steep curve, right? If you are trying to get something quick and easy to like to spin up an indexing tool for you to get data out to the blockchain, that is a subgraph.
Yeah, that's a good differentiator. I like the high speed and the performant aspect of substreams. Lamborghini, a Ferrari, it's a very, very impressive piece of architecture when you need it. When you need that, it's amazing. When there is a generic, more, I wouldn't say, let's just say more general use case, subgraphs are really, really nice for that. And it's nice that those two are out there.
Yeah.
You've been building with Builders DAO for how long now? So you were with the graph and introduced to it about 3 years ago. When did you join Builders DAO?
Oh, so I joined the builders now about a year into the graph.
Gotcha. And how has that been?
Yeah.
Building custom subgraphs and substreams. What's that been like? Getting requests in and then building specifically to different teams' specifications.
Okay, so I would say being in the builders that has really helped in terms of and understanding how production Web3 systems are like. So, for instance, building some of the indexing tools for for revert finance. I don't know if I'm sure you can know. Not you, Marcus, but like anyone listening should know revert finance for Uniswap. You kind of see this kind of big protocols that have a lot of user interaction, and like you are working on how to like properly present data and make it meaningful to the end user. So you really learn a lot about data engineering, data analysis, as well as blockchain indexing. So it's been a very good experience so far.
Yeah. Shout out to everyone at Builders DAO. You know who you are. Appreciate what you guys are doing. And shout out to you, Justice, hopping in there. Now that you've been building with subgraphs for years, and now Substreams for years. AMP. AMP is here, and it's another product in the Graph umbrella, and it's been deployed by Edge and Node. What was your first impression of AMP as a current Subgraph and Substreams builder?
Okay, so when I heard of the AMP release, I was actually watching SmartCon on YouTube. So I actually saw the CEO of Edge and Node, Mr. Rodrigo, actually talking about AMP. And I don't know, maybe so I've watched graph presentations. Like I watched several of those uh, presentations even before joining the graph. I'd actually known about the graph before I joined the graph. So when I saw him talk about AMP, first of all, the performance of AMP was actually something I was trying to actually test out, because I know how good subgraphs and substreams are. So I was like very intrigued on like the kind of numbers they were mentioning. So I was like, let me check it out, right? And secondly, was because of the promised user experience, right? Sorry, the promised developer experience. So in terms of development, some teams or some yeah, some teams may need to hire new engineers for them to solve like specific problems, right? So if you are solving a upstream problem, you need a kind of engineer versus if you are solving a subgraph problem versus if you are solving an AMP problem. For AMP, I feel like AMP still gives you that level of what substreams can do in terms of power, like in terms of speed, but then it also gives you the simplicity in terms of like a subgraph. At the same time, which I think is not mentioned a lot, is that it reduces cost in terms of migration, right? So if you have people who are maybe regular data analysts, right? They know Excel, they know SQL, they know Python, for instance, right? If they know that they can actually use AMP on day one, they don't need to learn anything new. But if, let's say, you are a regular Power BI, let's say, expert who knows Excel and SQL, you can't use Subgraph easily or you can't use Substreams easily. So those are the three things that you get to realize once you start using.
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic overview of the differences and similarities, advantages and disadvantages of each of the different products. Not one product does everything for everybody. It's not possible. It does feel, though, with each of these three different products, they each have their own specific lanes, where subgraphs do things well, substreams do things well, and AMP does things well. Is there, can you name one thing of each that AMP does well, substreams do well, and subgraphs do well? When would you choose each one of those tools for something that you're trying to achieve?
Okay, so after using AMP and using substreams and subgraph, I would say when you are doing something where when you are doing something where you want modular control, you want to own like the whole stack. And I'm saying you want to own the whole stack. You want it hosted on your system, everything. I think you should use AMP because AMP is very modular, right? So AMP has this way of storing your data, like storing your data in packet files, PARQUET packets, right? So packet files, and you can store those in an S3 remote like area, right? And you can have like a remote Postgres database, right? That can track the like so it's kind of like a cursor, right? Tracking which block you are in, right? And that is aligned to what you have in your S3 like your remote system, right? So basically, if I want that whole control for compliance reasons, I can use AMP, right? So AMP will be very good for that use case, especially things like stablecoin use cases, like a lot of DeFi use cases whereby now we need compliance to like move to the next step. Looking at what's happening with the Genius Act and like the others, right? I think that's where AMP is. So AMP is at the bleeding edge of what we are facing today, right? I think for the other two, I would use, like I said, I'll use substreams when I'm just focusing on like a lot of clunking, like raw power. Like that's what substreams is for. And substreams, the the reason why I like substreams, right, is that when you use substreams, it has this thing called a sink. right? That's this way of syncing data. So syncing data is maybe I want to transfer data into a particular source, right? AMP does that for you like automatically. It is built in. So like in terms of substreams, you can sync data into, let's say, ClickHouse, right? Whereby now you can now put that into like a regular database, right? And now like fed that data into the client side. But AMP will now take care of the latency and the throughput regarding like serving that use case, right? So if let's say you're building something that needs, maybe you're building something around, let's say, real-time car movement with AI, and you need to be able to get maybe some data on the or like off the blockchain, right? Like substreams is for like that kind of like raw power use case. And I think subgraphs can be for people who are not like maybe you don't have like a very like big user like user base, like you don't have like billions of users, you don't have like a lot of users, right? Subgraphs can be very good for that, so you can still be able to get good indexing speed with like relative development speed as well, so you won't spend like so much time actually building.
I think that's a fantastic overview, Prince. That was very well done. The modularity of AMP, the speed of substreams, and the general use cases of subgraphs, I feel like that's a very, very good way to put them. Now, you have written a few articles specific to AMP. And I
Yeah.
appreciate that as a developer relations professional. Whenever you are looking at bleeding edge technology and then trying to put a narrative to it, trying to put words to it beyond exactly what the engineers are doing, just one step beyond, it is a tricky type of effect of how to tell the story of something that's so new, that's changing every day, every week, every month. What was the process like for you to not only build with AMP, but then to shift over and write these articles?
Okay, so for me, when I was starting my software engineering career, I was kind of the guy who liked to like binge watch tutorials, right? That was very early
Same,
on, and I saw
same,
that. Yeah,
same.
and I saw
YouTube,
that.
I just watch and watch and watch, and I do all the tutorials. And yeah, I sometimes I wouldn't know what I was doing. I would just simply just follow and then learn the patterns, and then over time I'd say, oh, now I understand after the fact. Yes, I
Yeah,
understand that.
and I think it's very common. I'm glad and you can relate. So it's kind of like you actually think you understand what you are watching, but you actually don't,
No,
right? So what I realized is that the best way to actually learn something very fast is by just like going into the depth, right? So I actually saw your repo. There's an AMP demo repo that Marcus has done. It's very good. I
thank
took
you.
that repo and I basically went like to like line like file by file. I was reading through your code. I ran it on Anvil and it worked. And I was like, hmm. And I saw it was so fast at streaming data to the UI. That was actually what actually caught my attention because when you are developing, they say think of it like you are developing something like a prediction market system, right?
Mm-hmm.
You want that kind of speed on your UI because
Mm-hmm.
the difference between a 0.01 second maybe can be somebody like missing a particular like trading uh, opportunity, right? So when I saw that example you gave, I was like, let me actually try it out. So I tried it out with Uniswap. I built a profit and loss statement data set with AMP. And that came because I had done work with Revert before. That's Revert Finance, right? So I was actually trying to see whether I can build with AMP, what is possible with Revert Finance, right? And I was basically like that was how the whole journey began. And of course, I like to document. So I actually have even like zero knowledge blocks that I've written in the past. So normally when I learn something, I normally document. So as I learned from yours and I was experimenting with mine, I was documenting my thought process on how I think AMP looks like. So I broke it down into three core layers: the architectural layer, the physical layer, and there's this one other layer, but you can check in the blog. But basically, I was looking at things in systems. Like, how can somebody who doesn't know about indexing understand AMP? And I was basically taking it from like a non-developer's perspective into like a hands-on project with like AI, how to use AI talking to AMP. So yes, that's how
Brilliant.
it
Brilliant.
started.
I found the exact same discovery. I feel like we're on similar timelines. I followed so many tutorials, and I remember looking back and saying, I don't know what I'm doing. I kind of understand the pattern, but I don't know what I'm doing. The only way that I was able to learn, this is before AI, was to truly build something from the ground up, looking at the files and looking line by line between the files before I could really compute what was going on. And then I began writing articles. It's a nearly identical story that you and I have. It's amazing.
Yeah.
The next thing that I want to ask is, okay, you've written these articles, you have built on AMP. What's something maybe that you are surprised about AMP that you didn't expect to see in your learnings at first glance, and then when you saw it, you said, "Wow, that's something a little different."
Actually, there are many things about AMP that like surprised me, not one. So first of all is the fact that it's SQL end to end, right? So SQL end to end means that, so like I was saying about how the structure of AMP is like. So think of it like this, right? There is blockchain data sitting on the blockchain, right? Then AMP has this way of like saying, okay, let me give you the basics of blockchain data. That is the block data, the core data, the events, and the logs, right? So basically, you have the the basic things you need from the blockchain as data, and it tells you that, okay, right now for you to get your data out, write an SQL query, right, stating how you want the data to appear, but for you, like particularly for you, and once it's able to get the basic data for you, that's what we call raw data sets. The derived data set, that's what you want. Derived is like, think of it like calculus, like you want to derive something from a function, yes. So to the derived data set is what you want. And it's so fast at getting you that data, like it's extremely fast. As soon as you create a derived data set, it basically ingests it like within like a millisecond. So that's already impressive. And then what happens is that once you deploy that data set, you can query that, right? And then in your query, you can make even more like custom aggregations as you
Mm-hmm.
would do if you are writing, let's say, a, a normal procedure. If you've written any banking system before, I have written open banking software before. So if you've written any like open banking software, what happens is that at the back end there's something called a procedure like script. It's normally in SQL. It's very like deep SQL. It's not like basic SQL. And you're basically thinking a lot about security at the same time, querying and all that. It gives you that level of flexibility on the query side, whereby you can query things as like complex as you want, and it gives you like the response on the whatever UI or whatever client you wanted to get it on. It gives you that response also like at like quick speed, like similar to a substream speed, which is actually very impressive, or even more, like depending on what you're doing. That is two. And some other things are the way it's able to use things like Grafana and Prometheus. So if you want like to be able to observe some of the metrics, logs, and things that are happening at your indexing like end, you can be able to have like full visibility to that. Another thing also is the streaming use case. So if you are building, like I was saying maybe in the beginning, if you can remember, I was talking about if let's say you're working on like a real-time self-driving car, for instance, right? That may be talking to the blockchain, right? It has this kind of Kafka integration, which can be very good for such use cases. So it depends on maybe how maybe intuitive your mind as an engineer. You are having a very powerful tool written in a way that makes you underestimate it, because it's so simple to use that you may underestimate how powerful you can use it for like several use cases. So yeah.
That's great. The transformations part of it, the derived data sets. I feel that's most similar to the mappings.ts file in subgraphs, and also the modularity of the modules in substreams, essentially allowing for customization of how that data lands into a database. I like with the SQL, as you were speaking to, has it's just littered throughout all of AMP from front to back. Being able to use SQL to define how those transformations happen during streaming, which is great. That's really nice because it can just settle right into your database how you like it. And also, let's say you have it in your database and you want to do transformations after the fact, you can do that too. You don't have to actually re-index everything. You already have the data in the database. We all know the headaches of having to potentially re-index something from block zero all the way up the chain head because of a small change in the
That's
mappings.
true.
Yeah, and that is
Yeah,
really nice to say, oh my goodness, we have
yeah,
all the
that's true.
data really right there. And also, could it be on, local, on-prem, cloud, wherever we like it, just run SQL against it. And that flexibility to support your point has been really, really nice. Building on subgraphs for years now, I remember after a while building on subgraphs, I stopped deploying subgraphs. It's just because I needed to write the spec out. I was literally, I had to think for a week or two before deploying because I was like, what might happen? Because I didn't want to keep on going
Yeah,
back and redeploying version, V0.1.9, V0.1.10. You know what I mean? All those versions.
yeah. So you have to wait for the. I understand. Syncing time.
Yes. And also, now that I'm working with Edge and Node, realize that that's also very nice for the engineers here because they don't have to maintain all of those subgraphs that I keep on deploying all the time. But that's neither here nor there. So, Prince, you've now written these articles. I'll link these articles into the comments after this video posts, and I'll also share this out there as well. What's next for you? I'm curious with AMP, with substreams, with subgraphs. You're part of Graph Builders DAO. What are you working on within that realm? Is there anything else that you're working on too, as someone in the graph ecosystem? I know typically builders in this system have one, two, or three projects going on at any given time. If there's anything else going on, what's going on?
Yeah. So, in regards to like the broader graph system, like our system, I was looking at creating a tool that can help you migrate production subgraphs to AMP because I believe that like what you were saying just few minutes ago, the resyncing times can be fixed like completely if we have a way to like index a lot of like raw data sets, right? That will allow people to create like
Right.
derived, like create their own like at very like quick speed, right? So if you can have a way to have like a tool that can help you have like production subgraphs being on AMP, like basically like the idea is that you can migrate your subgraph to AMP in like in a few minutes. I'm not talking about you trying to rebuild everything from scratch. No, I'm trying to talk about like you run like a few CLI commands and you can get everything like up and running. And like that's what I think should be the next level for
I
like
think that's
AMP's
brilliant.
adoption. Yeah,
Yeah, that's
that's
brilliant.
one. I,
That's very nice. I think that's brilliant. There's a lot of developers out there I know that are curious about AMP and that they're subgraph developers. And I always like to see when I'm learning anything new in terms of tech or in life really, an example of the finished product and also the beginning of where I start. And if I could see, hey, I know the subgraph well, and this is a one-to-one copy of it in AMP, and it's doing the exact same thing. It's providing the exact same data. How is it similar? How is it different? How is it operating? I would love that. So if you were able to pull that off, Prince, go ahead and throw that into a commit, throw that into a branch, and I'll go ahead and bring that to the team. Very cool, sir. So I'll leave you with this at the very end. First, I want to thank you for your effort into the graph ecosystem. You're well respected, well regarded, and well liked, and that's nice to have in the graph ecosystem. Is there anything that you'd like to tell engineers out there that might be listening, that might be watching, and might be curious about AMP and what you would like those engineers to understand about it.
Okay, so what I would say is in this world of AI, right, and agents working around, right, I think this is the time for, like, I feel like getting data from the blockchain is not just something that should be like, oh, I'm getting data from the, like, I'm indexing, right? Think of it like in a think of it in the terms that you are trying to prove to people, right, that trust still exists, that we can live in a world where we can both trust each other, and also agents can trust each other. I've heard of a lot of use cases whereby we have people losing money from agents, maybe like other agents spoofing like other agents to like get their money. And I think some of these things can be prevented if you have very good indexing engines that can give you compliance agents, for instance. So I think Edge and Node is actually in the right place at the right time. They have another product called Ampersand, which I think like they have to check out. But the combination of uh, making trust exist in a world where trust, like the lines between what is real and what is not real is becoming like very blurry, right? So the blockchain is that home for you to at least make that line something much clearer for people who are not very tech savvy. So the graphs amp is actually the gateway for that new world. So that's what I think.
Brilliant, brilliant. Thank you, Prince Justice, for your time. Thank you so much for being here in the graph ecosystem. I'm really looking forward to getting to know you more as time moves forward in this ecosystem. And I just want to, once again, thank you for building. I love the idea of a subgraph to AMP migration device. If you're able to pull that off, I'm rooting for you, man, big time. So, audience, if you haven't yet, please check out Prince Justice's articles on AMP and his guides and his experience building with AMP as a subgraph, substream, and now AMP developer. It's going to be a quick start for you guys to start wrapping your head around AMP and getting to know its architecture. So, with that being said, Prince, thank you for your time. Audience, thank you so much for joining us at this time. Prince, if you could just keep your tab open, stay on the line. Let's just go ahead and say goodbye to everyone on the stream. See you guys. Take care.
Ciao.